In the grim darkness of the far future, horrors beyond comprehension whisper in the shadows as mankind continues to wage war against itself. The honeyed word of thirsting gods tempt the Imperium closer and closer to the edges of depravity, threatening to corrupt all of mankind with its vile touch as unholy aliens feast on the masses. However, there are those dedicated to snuffing out the seeds of evil before their roots can take hold within humanity's hearts. They are the Inquisition, the unseen hand of the Emperor that hunts down the foulness of the Xeno, the heretic, and the mutant. Deep within the grasp of the Exilus sector, a lone inquisitorial retinue wait patiently within their ship, crashed within the mountaintops of the frozen planet Phendrana. Brave soldiers and engineers of the Death Korp sit by small bonfires, eating their meek rations, as the voices of radio operators ring through the metal halls. They poke and dial the vox-casting equipment under the supervision of a tall man of regal dress as each frequency returns nothing but the silence of space. "Sir, we've tried every frequency available. Communications must be jammed or—" "No," he responds. "There is simply no one around to respond. We are alone on this planet, maybe in this entire sector." With that, he begins to pace around the room as his rebreather slowly pulses, the jingling of the chains and charms adorning his suit drowned out by metallic footsteps. His men wait patiently, as they know their leader's proclivity to think while pacing. The man's mind lays out the entire situation, the state of their ship, their supplies, the number of men under his command, their location, available resources. Every possibility and eventuality is combed twice over as the man accounts for every imaginable scenario they could logically encounter. The man's voice breaks the silence, his steps coming to an abrupt halt as he begins firing out orders across the room. Soldiers scurry to their feet as engineers and technicians hurry to their posts. Those who can repair are to fix the ship. Recon units are to survey the local area as infantry establish defensive perimeter. Quartermasters begin to count stock on various supplies as various squad leaders leave to command their men in the various tasks they have suddenly been assigned. The fancily dressed man looks back to his star maps, unable to determine their location. His instincts were correct, as they usually tend to be. The planet they had crashed on was not within known space, and with that, out of reach with the greater Imperium. His retinue was cut off from known space entirely, so they would have to carry out their mission away from Imperial support. Here in the frozen wastelands of Phendrana, they would have to scavenge whatever they could to survive. Then, when their ship was repaired, the loyal soldiers of the Imperium, led by Inquisitor Percival, Benedictus, Maximillian, Johansson, could carry out their most sacred charge, the complete annihilation of the Imperium's enemies. A few months ago, I went out of town for an event, and while I was out, I stopped by my local friend's game store of choice. It was a nice little store, and while I didn't expect to get anything, I ended up walking out with a Kill Team box of Krieg veterans. These guys are lightly customized, the original goal of the project being a project less focused on conversion labor and more on painting. The leader of the squad, the normal plasma pistol and power sword guy, was replaced by Inquisitor Johansson, made from the Inquisitor from the Cursed City box set with some light modifications, including a head swap and a new gun. I'll save the power sword guy for another day, but let me get to the main meat of the project, the painting. Today's paint job was focused on many things, including traditional painting methods, limited color palettes, and speed painting, all coming together. Each of these work off of the foundation that is the Grisaille Painting method. No, not the new slap chop painting fad. In fact, I didn't even know what slap chop was until I finished painting these. And real quick, a side note for the greater wargaming community. This painting method doesn't need a new trending name. It's okay to call it in Grisaille. Trust me, French words are scary, but they won't hurt you. Also, did you know Vince, the guy who sold the slap chop, went to jail for beating up a hooker? But speaking of beating up hookers, The Grisaille method is a method of painting in monochrome that allows an artist to map out volumes of shadow. While you can paint with it as is, many artists also like to use it as an undertone when painting with things like oils on canvas, or for miniature painting, volumetric undertones for transparent paints. I first learned of this technique from the painting god Marco Frassoni a couple years ago, who likes to use this technique with transparent paints like contrast paints to get some really great models at really fast speeds. While I didn't follow Marco's process exactly, I took the opportunity to experiment with things a little bit. To do this, I started with a black primer, spraying some white primer straight down on top of the mini in what is called a zenithal priming. This ensures the bottom of the mini is darker than the face area, which draws the eye of the viewer there. Also, while I normally give people shit for using zenithal priming methods and then covering them up with thick layers, a zenithal priming admittedly does make it a lot easier to see on camera, so, fair point. After setting up the zenithal priming, I dry brushed the whole miniature with a pure white, allowing the major edges of the model to stand out from the black hidden in the recesses. From there, I shaded the whole thing with a brown, this one being Citadel's Wildwood contrast paint. While this helped fill out the depths of the mini, this actually helped me set up for the next painting experiment, the Zorn Palette. The Zorn Palette, most famously used by the Swedish artist Anders Zorn, and I feel like some recent YouTuber did something on it, but I don't remember who, consists of 4 major colors: yellow, red, black, and white, which just so happens to be the color scheme that I wanted to make these guys in the first place. This is an interesting premise for me, as I've never painted with a restricted palette like this, and given that the majority of the color scheme could adhere to this palette with some modifications, I decided to give it a go. With the Zorn palette in mind, shading the initial base coat with brown is advantageous for me, as not only will red easily cover the brown later, but there are many components on the mini that will end up being brown, so painting all of them now will help me save time down the line. After the red dries, I applied more brown to all the brown parts except the leg wrappings, which are currently a nice tan due to the previous application of brown being very diluted. For the metallic armor bits and guns and other accessories, I didn't have access to the metallic silver I normally use thanks to the Zorn palette, so I opted to make the metallic parts of the mini a dark gray. While my initial base coat was a little too thick on accident, which is funny considering I said earlier, but in my defense, I mixed up the proper paint and then promptly forgot I had it, so I used a different puddle of paint. But anyways, I salvaged the situation by sponging on a neutral gray and tiny tidbits of a lighter gray. This helped give it a rough, metallic kind of look to it, which only looked better after I washed it lightly with a black wash. Next up were all of the gold bits, but all of the gold bits that I wanted couldn't get gold thanks to my palette restrictions, so I opted to paint all of the gold parts white, then tint it with a bright yellow, in particular Bad Moon Yellow from Citadel's new contrast line. At first I thought to dirty it down with some brown, but the brown washes dirtied this really bright neon yellow too much, and it always came out as a warmish brown tan. But eventually I kind of grew fond of the really bright yellow, as the trinkets and baubles I put the color on really caught the eye, so I kind of decided to leave it as is. With the paint job of the minis done, I proceeded to the last experiment, bare plastic base rims. In theory, this would prevent the painted base rims from wearing off over time, which works in this case as I prefer a black base rim. However, if you didn't want a black base rim, you'd need to get that color of plastic or resin or whatever you're using. Keeping with the palette restrictions, the ground on top, which is my usual clay cat litter mixture with some beach sand, all gets the gray to white treatment for the stone, as the frozen wasteland they found themselves on is very cold and barren and mountainous. And finally, I used the flat end of a metal tool to apply a bunch of snow effects to the models. The following matte varnish would help seal everything in, finishing off the squad. And there you go, guys. There's my painting experiment for this little inquisitorial host I've got going on here. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to make their actual name, as they're less Inquisition focused and more focused on the particular Inquisitor they're stuck with. So I imagine Inquisitor Johansson will kind of reorganize forces, you know. But yeah, I've really always wanted to paint something with the particular Grisaille method. And I'm glad I actually got around to finally doing it, because it's really fun. Using a restricted palette was really fun too. And the speed painting and it all kind of worked out, and like this honestly only took like 2 nights to paint. Like it just flew together and it looks great. I really enjoy these guys. Admittedly, I had a lot of trouble with the lore, getting like names and the general vibe of the squad down. But I think I ended up settling for something I like, and in my head, the Inquisitor is kind of the star of the show. I know it didn't really come across in the intro I had written up, but he's like a really sharp-witted, kind of clever, snappy kind of guy with a little bit of smartass in there, you know. So whenever I get down to eventually expanding these characters in a more expository sense, I'm really... He seems like a character. I'm really excited to write for him. Also, his initials happen to spell out PBMJ, which was hilarious to me when I wrote it out, and I really liked it, so I kept it. But yeah, in general, the lore just really kicked my ass. I was really indecisive, because I really like the Inquisition. It's probably one of my favorite parts of 40k in general, and I just wanted my Inquisition representation within Exilus to start off on the right foot, and I don't know, I felt like I kept bungling it for a while. I really like the Death Korp of Krieg. I really like their models. So down the line, if this kill team were to expand into like a larger, like kind of like the backbone of an Inquisition army, the majority of the models would probably be Death Korp, simply for the fact that I like their models. You know, Mr. Inquisitor just looked around and plucked some random guardsmen who happened to be from Krieg. So that's my lore reason for it, at least. So yeah, I got one project out of my backlog done. I had a lot of fun with speed painting and the restricted palettes. I ended up with a kill team I really like and is actually legal for new kill team. All the kill teams I have up in my box are all outdated. So besides these guys and the Angel of Lament, I don't have a lot of options for playing new kill team. But honestly, it doesn't really matter because I don't get to play anyways. But, you know, it's nice. Nice to know I can play. Yeah, you guys know how it goes at the end of these videos. I'm just rambling at this point. But, yeah, I hope you guys like these guys as much as I like these guys. And I'm really excited to see more of them down the line. And Mr. PB&J Sandwich here. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Writing the script for this video was actually like pulling teeth, so I am glad it is over. And I am very excited to start on the next project. Whatever that might be. I don't know. I'm just kind of in a as it comes along kind of mood. You know, I'm going with the flow. You know, I'm just here. I'm having fun. But yeah, talk to you later, guys.